When my family moved into the upscale, perfectly manicured neighborhood of Stone Grove Estates, we knew we'd attract attention, just not for the reasons we ended up doing so. It was the kind of gated community where everyone drove Teslas, held HOA meetings like congressional hearings, and lawn height was more regulated than airport security. We weren't your typical Stone Grove family. Dad liked to fix trucks on the driveway. Mom had a massive German Shepherd that didn't like leashes. My sister Sophia wore combat boots instead of tennis skirts. And I flew surveillance. Drones over the rooftops for fun, and maybe once or twice hacked into the neighborhood security cameras to test for blind spots. Still, we paid our dues, kept our house neat, and never started trouble. That didn't stop the HOA president, Karen Whitmore, blonde, Botoxed, and louder than a bullhorn at a protest, from making us her personal crusade. It started small. A citation for unauthorized vehicle maintenance when Dad replaced a tire in our own driveway. Then a fine for excessive barking from our dog Rufus, even though he barked only when Karen's designer mutt, Sprinkles, strutted past like he owned the sidewalk. Then came the flyer in our mailbox, a $250 fine for not trimming our hedges to community standard curvature. That was the day we decided to ignore her nonsense entirely. Karen didn't like that at all. She stormed up to our front door the next morning with her little clipboard and a camera documenting every inch of our property like she was about to submit it to the FBI. "Your lawn is 2.3 inches in height," she snapped. "The standard is 2. That's a violation." Mom laughed in her face and shut the door without saying a word. Karen posted about it on the HOA Facebook group within minutes. "Non-compliance is a cancer," she typed, probably while sipping. "Sugar-free tea. If they think they're above the rules, they shouldn't be here." The post got 14 likes and 3 angry reacts. The next day, our trash can wasn't picked up. The day after that, the HOA newsletter had a feature on community disruptors, with a silhouette photo that looked suspiciously like Dad standing next to his truck. We let it slide. Homeland Security agents aren't known for throwing tantrums over garbage pickups or newsletters, but when she called the cops on us for allegedly violating noise ordinances, claiming we were blasting military-grade audio equipment, things turned. The truth was we'd had the family over for a barbecue and Uncle Joe had tuned his old ham radio to listen to aviation traffic. That was it. The police arrived, 3 cruisers deep, acting like they were about to find a meth lab. Dad opened the garage, holding a spatula in one hand and an apron that read, "License to Grill," around his waist. "Evening, officers," he said calmly. "Smells good out here," one of them muttered, clearly embarrassed. "We got a noise complaint, military transmissions or something?" Dad led them inside, showed them the radio, just a dusty old relic, nothing illegal, and offered them ribs. They left 15 minutes later with full stomachs and an apology. Karen, watching from across the street through her giant bay window, looked like she was ready to implode. Her next move was even more aggressive. She started sending legal-looking letters printed on fake HOA letterhead, demanding we appear at a compliance hearing in her living room. "Not happening," Mom said flatly. That's when Karen crossed the line from annoying to dangerous. One night, we noticed the gate's security logs had been tampered with. Dad pulled the logs himself. He built similar systems overseas and noticed Karen had entered the access panel and deleted entries. The only reason you'd do that? To hide visits or intrusions. So Dad added some discrete motion detectors around the perimeter, and I installed a few night vision trail cams. 2 nights later, at 3:17 a.m., our cameras caught someone in yoga pants and a hoodie crouching near the backyard fence, flashlight in hand. It was Karen. She was taking photos of our landscaping at 3 in the morning. Sophia wanted to release Rufus and let her get the full canine greeting, but we held back. Instead, we compiled everything, every fake fine, every deleted security log, every video, and even a recording of her compliance hearing voicemail where she threatened to escalate this all the way to the city council. Homeland Security doesn't take threats lightly, especially when you threaten federal employees. And yes, our family isn't just patriotic, we're employed by the Department of Homeland Security. Dad's a cyber infrastructure specialist who works with state-level emergency systems. Mom oversees transportation logistics and has full federal clearance. Sophia is a field agent in counterintelligence. I work drone surveillance and communications analysis. Our cover story had always been vague. We work in IT and logistics because it's easier than explaining security protocols. But Karen had pushed us to the edge. "Let's teach her a lesson," Sophia grinned. We didn't break laws. We followed them to the letter, but we knew exactly which ones Karen was breaking. Unauthorized use of HOA authority, trespassing, defamation, illegally impersonating a municipal code enforcer, hacking gate logs, which violated multiple electronic privacy statutes. We compiled the dossier and submitted it, not to the HOA board, but directly to a DHS contact we'd worked with on cyber-stalking cases. Within 72 hours, Karen received a cease and desist order and was informed that she was under federal investigation for impersonation of a government entity. You'd think that'd be the end of it, but it wasn't. Karen decided we must have set her up and told the HOA board we were part of some deep state conspiracy. She called another emergency board meeting, which we were not invited to, and distributed packets accusing us of being Russian operatives planted in Stone Grove to destabilize suburban America. We laughed harder than we had in weeks. Her paranoia became a storm cloud over the whole neighborhood. Some of the neighbors sided with her, convinced by her Facebook Live rants filmed with terrible lighting and captions like, "Wake up, Stone Grove." Others started asking us for help with their security systems and HOA complaints. The tide was turning. But Karen wasn't done. She filed a motion to have our family evicted from the neighborhood, claiming we posed a threat to community harmony. That's when we decided to stop playing defense. We attended the next HOA meeting in full force. Dad wore his DHS badge openly for the first time. Sophia arrived in her field gear. Mom carried an official folder with federal insignia. I brought a small portable screen and queued up the video of Karen sneaking into our backyard. The room went silent. "This," Dad began, his voice calm but commanding, "is what a federal agent's life looks like when someone mistakes civics for a dictatorship." He clicked through the evidence, highlighting each violation, each lie, each piece of video, every legal overstep. By the end, the HOA board looked ready to faint. "We're not here to cause trouble," Mom said, her voice level. "We've served this country for decades. We've kept silent out of respect for community peace, but we won't be bullied by someone who thinks a title gives her power over the law." The room broke into murmurs. One board member, a quiet guy named Ben, stood up and motioned to have Karen removed as president pending further investigation. The vote passed. Karen stood up, shrieked about corruption and collusion, and stormed out, dragging her little dog behind her. Outside, she screamed that the feds are everywhere and promised she'd go to the news. We never saw her on TV. Instead, a week later, a moving truck showed up. Karen's house was sold within the month. Rumor had it she moved to a remote cabin in Idaho and now runs a conspiracy podcast. The neighborhood calmed down after that. The fines stopped, the trash pickup returned. And strangely, people began waving to us more often. We were still the weird family, but now we were also the ones who brought peace to Stone Grove. Rufus got treats from nearly every house on the block. Dad started fixing other people's trucks. Mom helped organize the 4th of July barbecue. Sophia taught a community self-defense class. As for me, I upgraded the neighborhood surveillance system and gave a digital privacy seminar that half the community attended. Life was good again. But the silence didn't last long. Because 2 months after Karen left, we found something under our mailbox, a note. No signature. Just one line. "She's not done with you yet. We looked at each other silent, because we all knew something Karen didn't. We weren't just Homeland Security agents. We were trained for operations far more dangerous than neighborhood drama. And if Karen really wanted to play this game again, she had no idea just how badly it was going to end for her. The note beneath our mailbox was written on standard printer paper, plain and folded into a sharp square like it had been placed there with purpose, not tossed or dropped. "She's not done with you yet." That's all it said, and yet in those 6 words, we felt the hairs on the backs of our necks bristle in unison. We'd seen messages like this before, threats that pretended to be warnings, intimidation masquerading as mischief. But this wasn't some war zone or international black site. It was Stone Grove Estates, a neighborhood so obsessively tranquil that even the squirrels seemed afraid to act out of line. Still, the message reeked of familiarity, of Karen's unhinged vocabulary, and even though she'd moved out weeks ago, something told us she wasn't far. We initiated a silent family protocol that didn't require discussion. Sophia swept the perimeter twice that night. I checked all the cameras, logs, and sensors, including the trail cams hidden in the rose bushes and the blinking infrared motion sensors near the hedges. Dad installed fresh geofencing software that pinged any unauthorized movement within 30 feet of the house. Mom logged into her agency access dashboard and flagged any travel activity associated with Karen's license plate. 20 minutes. Later, we got a hit. Karen's Lexus had passed through the tollway 5 miles north of us just 48 hours ago. She was still local. But why? We assumed she'd fled with her tail tucked between her designer jeans, but clearly she was circling, waiting, maybe even plotting, and it didn't take long to figure out that she wasn't acting alone. Within 3 days, several oddities appeared across the neighborhood. The communal notice board near the park had a new flyer posted anonymously. Warning: deep state families invading Stone Grove, with poorly edited photos of us digitally pasted into scenes from war zones and protest rallies. One photo had Sophia's face on the body of a tank driver. Another showed Dad supposedly shaking hands with a foreign dictator. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so clearly targeted. Then came the neighborhood group texts, messages from unknown numbers urging residents to stay vigilant, warning that the Smith family, that's us, were not who they claimed to be. People started avoiding us again, nods turning to sidelong glances, barbecue invitations mysteriously drying up. But we weren't worried about social exile. We were concerned about escalation, so we did what we do best. We traced the source. Within an hour, I had tracked the phone number to a prepaid burner bought from a gas station 20 miles out. That alone wasn't enough, but it was a start. Sophia ran background on nearby properties and found one recently rented under a fake name using a burner credit card, a small bungalow 4 blocks from our house, rented by someone calling themselves Jane Clearwater, which screamed alias. We surveilled the place for 2 days. Day 1, nothing. Curtains drawn. No lights. Day 2, we caught her. Karen. Crouched by the back alley in sunglasses and a hoodie like she thought she was starring in an espionage film. She was dragging a small suitcase and looked nervously over her shoulder before disappearing inside. That's when it all clicked. She hadn't left Stone Grove. She'd embedded herself. Karen wasn't just trying to slander us. She was trying to infiltrate, sabotage, or worse, frame us. We had no choice but to elevate our response. Dad contacted an old friend in DHS who owed him a favor. In under 24 hours, we had legal clearance to place passive surveillance on Karen's hideout, thermal imaging, audio sweep, and low-range digital forensics. What we discovered shocked even us. Karen wasn't working alone. Inside the house, she'd been holding meetings, small, quiet gatherings with 3 or 4 other locals from the HOA, including 2 former board members and, surprisingly, a real estate agent named Marvin, who'd been trying to buy up houses around us for years. We recorded everything. Karen was furious in the recordings, spewing about how we overthrew her regime and how she would prove to the world we were plants, part of some DHS experiment to infiltrate domestic communities. The group bought into her madness. One of them, a woman named Janice, even said, "We'll never reclaim Stone Grove unless we expose them. What if we burn their security footage? Make it look like they're hiding something?" They were planning a break-in, a federal crime. We had enough evidence to get them all arrested, but we weren't ready to involve local law enforcement. We wanted to bait them, catch them in the act. So we set a trap. That weekend, we made sure to attend the local Stone Grove block party. We brought chips, wore smiles, laughed like normal civilians. I even brought Rufus, who wore his American flag bandana and got more attention than any of us. All the while, our house was empty, or so it appeared. In reality, we had turned it into a fortress of digital bait. Cameras hidden in walls, doors rigged with proximity sensors, even a decoy server full of fabricated classified files labeled Suburban OPS Confidential. We monitored from a secure location nearby, and sure enough, at exactly 2:14 a.m., we got a ping. Motion detected in the back door. Someone had disabled the outside camera, sloppy, but didn't realize we had a thermal backup behind the fence. 4 figures, all masked. 1 tall, Karen. 1 round, Marvin. The others were hard to tell. They made their way inside using a set of copied keys, probably from a past locksmith visit during the HOA's mandatory inspections, and began searching the office. Karen lifted the lid of the decoy laptop and smiled like she'd struck gold. They plugged in a USB, no doubt trying to copy data. What they didn't know was that the USB had triggered a silent alert to DHS's cyber division. Within minutes, an auto response froze the system, locked every file, and displayed a bright red warning. "Unauthorized access detected. You are being recorded." They panicked. One of them screamed. Karen dropped the USB and bolted. But we didn't intercept them. Not yet. We wanted to see how far she'd go. The next morning, we waited. At precisely 9 a.m., our doorbell rang. It was 2 local police officers. "We received a report," one of them said, glancing awkwardly at his notepad, "that your family may be in possession of illegal surveillance equipment and government property." We played dumb. "That's odd," Mom said. "Want to take a look?" They did. So we walked them through the house, showed them the very laptop Karen had tried to access. But now, it had a clean drive. The fake files had been purged, replaced with family photos and recipes. We showed them the cameras, perfectly legal, clearly disclosed. Then we handed over a flash drive. "You might want to review this," Sophia said. It contained all the footage of the break-in, the voices, the USB attempt, the false police report. The officers' faces dropped. "Why didn't you call us last night?" one asked. "Because we knew you'd be here today," Dad replied. An hour later, the entire HOA conspiracy was under formal criminal investigation. Karen, Marvin, Janice, and 2 others were arrested. Their mugshots made the local news. The headline read, "Stone Grove residents caught in suburban espionage scheme." Karen's face looked shocked, betrayed, like she still didn't understand what we were. We weren't rebels. We weren't radicals. We were the system she'd tried to weaponize. And we had turned it back on her. Yet even with Karen in cuffs, the damage she caused lingered. Several of our neighbors confessed they'd been manipulated by her lies. Some apologized. Others kept their distance. It didn't matter. We weren't there to win popularity contests. We were there to live in peace. But peace never lasts long when someone like Karen exists. And we learned the hard way that Stone Grove was just the beginning. Because 3 weeks after the arrests, a black SUV parked outside our house. Not government, not HOA. It just sat there, engine running, no plates. When we approached, it sped off. But the message was clear. Someone else was watching. And as Dad put it that night while we reviewed security footage, if Karen's just a symptom, what disease are we really fighting? We didn't have the answer then, but we knew we were about to find out. Because buried inside the footage from the break-in, hidden in a single frame from a camera no one touched, we saw something we never expected. A symbol spray-painted under our mailbox, just faint enough to miss, unless you were trained to look. A triangle within a circle, a mark we hadn't seen in years, not since the operation in Belarus. Sophia went pale. "That's not Karen," she whispered. "That's the Paladin Network." And just like that, Stone Grove became ground zero for something much bigger than neighborhood politics. Something global. Something we thought we'd buried. We weren't just protecting our home anymore. We were protecting something much larger. And the next phase was already in motion. The symbol beneath our mailbox, a triangle enclosed by a circle, was a ghost we never expected to reappear, especially not in the pristine picket-fenced shadows of Stone Grove Estates. That insignia, scrawled faintly in black marker on concrete, had been the clandestine marker of the Paladin Network, a splinter group long thought to be defunct after its leadership was neutralized during a black site operation in 2017. The network had specialized in psychological infiltration, turning public paranoia and civil distrust into weaponized social warfare. But that was overseas, in war-ravaged provinces and unstable nations. Not here, not under the rose trellises and neighborhood watch programs of suburban America. Yet here it was, a forgotten brand crawling out of the past, and we'd just lit a beacon on ourselves by drawing the neighborhood's attention with Karen's arrest and the surveillance spectacle. Something told us Karen wasn't just driven by delusions. She'd been used, manipulated by whispers that weren't hers. The depth of her conspiracy, her sudden escalation from HOA tyrant to organized saboteur, wasn't just coincidence. It was orchestration. So we reassembled. No more playing by community rules or quietly logging data. This time we shifted into full ops mode. Dad secured an encrypted satellite uplink through DHS internal systems. Mom pulled remote access to regional infrastructure patterns, cell towers, fiber relay intersections, drone flyovers. Sophia tapped into dormant agency channels, pinging back cold leads on Paladin chatter. And I scanned for signal anomalies, packet trails, backdoor pings, synthetic traffic, and we found it. A signal bouncing through local nodes, disguised in neighborhood Wi-Fi bursts. It wasn't streaming data, it was sending pulses, timed pulses. Every 37 minutes, the pulse activated, scanned for connected devices, and triggered silent outbound pings to 3 separate IPs across the country. One in Texas, one in New Hampshire, and one masked behind a VPN routed through Moldova. The Stone Grove cell was real, and we were in its epicenter. That night, we reconvened at the safe house embedded 2 miles west of the estate. It was a nondescript warehouse we'd used before, disguised as a storage facility. Inside, we linked 3 secure systems, powered by independent generators, cut off from municipal infrastructure. "It's a listening post," Dad said, tapping the screen. "Right here in our backyard." "How many operatives?" I asked. "Too early to tell," Sophia muttered. "But they're feeding something upstream. The Paladin Network didn't die. It evolved." "They're using HOA networks," Mom realized aloud. "The most overlooked, unrestricted systems in America. Self-funded, minimal regulation, total power over gated communities. If I wanted to deploy domestic psyops, this is exactly where I'd start." And they had. With Karen as the test case, they'd probed response time, local law enforcement sensitivity, and DHS reaction. And thanks to us, they now knew the system could be gamed, at least temporarily. We had to act. Fast. Our plan began with mapping. Every HOA managed community within a 10-mile radius and scanning for digital traffic similar to the Stone Grove Pulse. We found 2 matches, one in Cherry Crest Village and one in Willow Heights. Both recently saw leadership overhauls. Both had cited sudden increases in local surveillance and odd resident fines. In Willow Heights, a father of 2 had just been arrested after a neighbor claimed he was broadcasting encrypted signals to foreign powers. That neighbor? A newly elected HOA board member. The signs were unmistakable. The Paladin Network had discovered the perfect Trojan horse, weaponized neighborhood associations to breed mistrust and force internal collapses, and we'd walked right into the center of it. That night, while the rest of Stone Grove slept beneath, soft porch lights and floral wreaths, we launched Phase 1, digital sterilization. We injected a virus through our own Wi-Fi signal, targeted only to bounce off infected packet structures, which would quietly disable outgoing pulse signatures. Within an hour, our house and the 2 known satellite neighborhoods went dark on the Paladin grid. But that was just the beginning. The network would notice. They would adapt. So we needed a Phase 2, infiltration. Sophia went undercover, reintroducing herself to Marvin, now out on bail and clearly still shaken. She posed as a freelance journalist, investigating overreach in Homeland Security, playing on his paranoia. He cracked within minutes, telling her Karen wasn't the architect. She was the puppet. Her mentor, he whispered, was a man named Emery Voss. The name hit like a bullet. Voss was the ghost, a former intelligence analyst turned rogue psychological operator, long believed to be dead. He vanished after leaking 6 black Psy-War playbooks and evading capture in Argentina. If he was in Stone Grove, or even operating near it, it meant Paladin was more dangerous than ever. We escalated clearance. DHS dispatched a containment team, but we warned them to move slow. Voss didn't work in brute force. He worked in narratives, control, whispers. And then he made his move. The next day, every home in Stone Grove received a letter, anonymous, typed, and slipped beneath every door. "Do you know who lives among you?" it read. "They monitor you, judge you. They control your families. You are not free. You are being watched." It was followed by a link to a private site, now defunct, but at the time loaded with manipulated surveillance footage, some from our own cameras, some from who knows where, edited to paint our family as government aggressors. And it worked. The neighborhood ignited. An emergency HOA assembly was called, not by the board, but by residents themselves. We attended, silent, watching, listening. The paranoia was spreading like fire. "Why does their garage have antennas?" one woman asked. "I heard they installed listening devices in the trash bins," said another. "Are we even safe in our homes?" "We have a right to know who they are," someone shouted. "They're spies!" A full-on mutiny against reason. And then, from the back of the room, he stepped forward. Emery Voss, silver-haired, unassuming, in a gray jacket and round glasses. He looked like a college professor, not the architect of psychological warfare. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice calm and paternal, "I represent a civic liberties organization that's been monitoring DHS infiltration of private communities. The Smiths are not who they claim to be." He handed out documents, fabricated dossiers, doctored images, altered clearance cards. He was weaponizing trust like a scalpel, cutting at every doubt, every unspoken fear. But we were ready. We stood. All of us. Dad removed his badge and held it high. "My name is Marcus Smith. I have served this country for 30 years. I've operated in active combat zones, prevented cyber attacks on this nation, and today, I stand before you not as an invader, but as a neighbor." "Lies!" someone shouted. "What proof do you have?" "This," I said, activating the projection system behind us. On the screen, raw footage, unedited, rolled. Karen breaking in, Marvin planting devices, Paladin meetings, Voss speaking to foreign agents via encrypted stream. The room fell into silence. "You're all victims," Mom said. "They used your homes, your trust, your HOA. You were test subjects in a domestic psychological experiment." "Why would they do this?" someone asked. "Because," Sophia replied, "if you can divide people at their most comfortable, if you can make them suspect their own neighbors, you don't need tanks or missiles. You just need fear." The meeting ended with stunned silence. Within 24 hours, DHS initiated a full extraction. Voss vanished before capture. Karen and her crew were moved to federal holding. The Paladin Network's local cells were dismantled, but the damage lingered. Stone Grove was quieter after that, subdued, humbled. We stayed, not because we had to, but because we chose to. Because we weren't just defending ourselves, we were defending an idea. That security doesn't come from fences or neighborhood watch stickers. It comes from vigilance, unity, knowing when to fight back. Months passed. The lawn was mowed. Rufus grew older. People smiled again, genuine if tentative. A neighborhood that nearly destroyed itself began healing. But we never let down our guard. Because on the 1-year anniversary of Karen's arrest, we found something beneath our mailbox again. A single white envelope, no writing, no stamp. Inside, one photo, a recent one. Our family, standing together on the lawn, waving to a neighbor, smiling, taken from a high angle, from a drone. The back of the photo had a single mark, the triangle in the circle, and 3 words, hand-scribbled in red ink. "We are watching." We looked at each other, and we knew. The HOA was only the beginning.